Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. I said Kaustubha Das. I said it in the same, what's it called? Intonation that I would say welcome to the show. I said Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam. We do this every day, Monday through Friday. Saturday, we sleep in till 8 o'clock and we take questions. If you got questions, you can write them into Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And then Sunday, we have a guest. We have a great guest this week.
Oh man, we got a special guest.
This is like the Raiders of the Lost Ark Swami, Indrajumna Swami, whom I really love. He's a special part of my life, and
one of the great
souls.
Actually,
he's in Vrindavan now, I think.
Is he?
And so he's going to join us, and he is like a empowered speaker, kirtan leader. Incredible story. You know his story about how he got into Bhakti?
I was wondering if we should have him tell that story. It's like such a shocking one.
I can't tell anybody. This is one of those things that are like, boom. Everybody's got a good story, but some are better than others. This is a good one. It's usually generally something like dramatic. You know, it was very dramatic.
He's a man of adventure for sure, and just one of the deepest devotees I've ever met in my life. Just like a person whose life is just given to God, just like 100%. And that's opened up a world of adventure.
Well, this is a yoga podcast, and yoga means connecting the soul. People give a lot of definitions. This is the definition according to Vyasadeva in the Vedas. I'm not interested in sharing here's what yoga means to me. Who cares? Who cares what yoga means to Raghunath? Here's what yoga means according to the Vedas themselves. To relink, reconnect. The jiva, that means the soul, and the divine, that means higher power, God, sweet baby Krishna, the universe, whatever you want to call your higher power. So that connection and that desire to connect is eternal. It's always there. Sometimes we forget, in the same way. Sometimes I forget to eat healthy and I ate this and I shouldn't have. Sometimes there's some illusion in there and someone offered me something unhealthy and I ate it anyway. But when we're sort of a little sober about life or a little thoughtful about life or feel a little inkling of truth in my heart, then I feel like, who am I? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be offering in this? Like, what's this life about anyway? That desire to want to reconnect with source, that's yoga. And that desire is inherent in everyone. It doesn't matter what religion you are, or if you're of no religion, or of what culture or nationality, or whether you're privileged or whether you're deprived. That is inherent in every being. And sometimes we just forget. And part of the forgetful thing is, instead of finding that connection with divine to fill that God-shaped hole in the heart, I start finding things of the material world to fit in that God-shaped hole. And it never quite is a perfect fit. Anybody know what I'm saying? Say Haribo. There, that's where you're supposed to go, Haribo! And instead, you gave me that look. You're supposed to go, Haribo! The only two people with the microphones on, and you guys didn't say anything. Come on! Give me something back.
Hardball.
Sorry, horrible.
Come on, it's 5 a.m. We should be a little bit more chipper.
Well, we're not as caffeinated as you right now, Raghunath.
You think it's caffeine? You don't
I
think
do.
I'm just running on this stuff naturally? I'm always.
You know, if you go
high
back
like
and you
this.
listen to the show from 2 days ago, you were caffeinated, brother.
That
I'm
was
telling you.
caffeine, Prabhu.
Yeah, I'm watching you do it right now.
It wasn't cocaine. It wasn't anything you suspect. No, Prabhu, so that, it's interesting. That's the old question. When did yoga start? Well, that's what yoga is. And as long as there's been God, which is forever, and as long as there's been souls, which is forever, there's been a few of those souls who just say, what's this crazy world about? I want something better. I want something higher. DJ, bring me a higher love. That's what it is. That's what that is. That's yoga. That song is yoga. What do you say we dive into the sweet nectar honeypot, Kaustubha?
Okay.
He's getting sick of this.
When are you going to just drop that, man? It's like,
I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it. It is sweet, and it is nectarian, and it's like a
Okay.
pot of honey. All right. Are you ready? Do any other announcements, important announcements?
Anything on Patreon today?
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, last night I posted a talk I gave yesterday, which is, it's a talk about like Brahminical culture, what it means to be Brahmin, speaking the truth, all that kind of stuff. So that's up there now.
Great. And then at 10 a.m., Damodar Swarup is doing an asana class. And there's a Bhakti recovery group meeting at noon today. And Raghu is doing Sweet Baby Krishna again tonight at 8 p.m.
Oh man, so much
What a
going on.
day.
Yeah.
And you get all that. You get all of that just to join patreon.com/wisdom of the sages and become our supportive community member. That's it.
All right.
And then you enter into the treasure trove, the vault. All right. I'm going to dive right in here. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnanatamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Milatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I just got a text that says, please stop yelling.
Who is it from?
My wife.
Okay. All right. You ready? We start a new chapter today, Raghunath.
I know. Purusha Shukta confirmed. I love these various are like, what does that even mean? The name of this chapter is called Purusha Shukta confirmed. And that was the music I was playing right before. The Purusha Shukta are these prayers that are ancient. And then they say they chant them in the spiritual realm. And the demigods, when they approach Lord Vishnu, they chant these prayers.
Yeah.
And then Lord Vishnu sends secret messages to Lord Brahma, who's sitting in meditation. So that's how you approach the Lord, with these beautiful prayers. Do you know some? You want to chant some?
Sahasra Shirsha Purusha, and it's like they're very they're everywhere. Like they're chanted very commonly in different ceremonies. So to this, as you mentioned, we read in Bhagavatam and other places how when the gods approach Lord Vishnu, they chant these prayers. And but to this day, there people are still chanting them.
people are still chanting them.
Maybe we should check in with our India correspondent, Chennai. I'm sure it's very popular.
Yeah, Maitreyi, do you chant them?
Does she learn them?
Does she know them? I'm gonna put her on this test. She doesn't know them. Did your dad know them?
Did you hear them growing up?
I think my dad knows them, but I don't know.
You don't know them. What kind of daughter are you? Okay, you've got to learn these prayers, Maitreyi.
At least a few of them.
What are you studying again, Maitreyi?
Bioengineering.
Bioengineering. You know what? A lot of people will be really impressed with that degree, but you will blow your father's mind if you learn the Purusha Shukta.
I think so, yeah.
Right? Come on. And your grandfather. He will be. Is your grandfather still alive?
No.
No, okay. But will appreciate too. Your whole 6 generations back will be blessed if you learn those Purusha Shuktas with your heart. Your heart is filled with devotion. It will mean a lot. I'll be impressed.
So will I.
I've
never learned it.
We used to play that Purusha Shukta before we would go on stage.
How auspicious.
And then it would end with Jai Shri Krishna. That was added later, of course. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya. And that's how we started one of our CDs.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people ask, what is that from? It's from the Purusha Shukta. So those are prayers of the demigods. And the name of this chapter is called Purusha Shukta Confirmed. Now, what does that mean, Kaustubha?
It means that in many ways, we've said this before, but it's always worth repeating, is that the Bhagavatam is the conclusion of all of Vyasadeva's works. So in the 4 Vedas, in the Rig Veda, I think, is the original appearance of the Purusha Shukta prayers, but they appear actually in all the 4 Vedas and in Bhagavatam and Mahabharata. It's popping up in different forms all over the place. But it's said that that Vyasadeva wrote the 4 Vedas and he wrote the Upanishads, and then there's a kind of like a condensed form of that Vedic literature in what's called the Vedanta Sutra, or sometimes it's called the Brahma Sutra, right? And so that's the compressed form of the Vedas, and then the Bhagavatam is the full explanation, the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So what you find in Bhagavatam, you will find in the Vedas, but it is expanded upon and clarified. So the Purusha Shukta prayers are originally there in the 4 Vedas. They're prayers where one approaches the Creator, Lord Narayan, Lord Vishnu, with a sense of reverence. In the Bhagavatam, it's going to confirm that. You're going to hear these verses, they're running parallel. They're kind of echoing. Someone that knows the Sanskrit and everything could say, you see this verse here relates to this verse in the Purusha Shukta.
It's very beautiful because generally when they're approaching Lord Vishnu, there is some desire in their heart.
Who's they?
Right, the demigods.
Okay.
Yeah,
like help us. The demons are gaining power.
Yeah, the demons are taking over the universe, but they don't just go in there barging in and making demands on Lord Vishnu. First, they offer these very beautiful prayers and appreciation. In the same way, sometimes if Raghunath Swami will ask you to speak or ask me to speak, he's so cultured that before he asks any speaker to speak, he publicly will appreciate the speaker.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just part of a sweet culture.
I think even you find that in like in monarchies and so on, right? Like when someone approaches the king or the queen, there's kind of a formality.
Yes. Right.
Your Royal Majesty.
The Lord of Chosworth. I agree. The Dragon Slayer. But my point is, like, we're never taught to pray like that. We generally pray like we treat God like a metaphysical Amazon Prime, where please give me this, please give me that, please make sure this pain goes away, please make sure my bank balance is okay, please. It's just a bunch of wants demanded on God. Anyway, so it's really nice, sort of a cultured way to approach divinity, with first through appreciation, etc., and then even putting it out there like, this is what we need. If you can help us, we'd appreciate it. And if you can't, if we just need to go through this, then we'll take it.
Well, now this chapter
what do you pray for, Kaustubha?
What do I pray for?
Yeah.
Isn't
that a good question, Mara? What does Kaustubha pray for?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's something I'm being interviewed here, but I would, the themes in my prayer, one of my focuses in life is that I really pray that God within the heart, that Krishna within my heart, the Lord Vishnu, Paramatma within me, that I really become fully aware of that presence at all times, at all moments, and that I'm able to see the presence of the Supersoul in every living being and in everything, in nature, etc. That's a realization I really want to come to. And so it's a prayer that I kind of return to, on a daily basis. Like that's one of my real focuses.
That's a nice prayer.
Thank you. What do you pray for, Mara?
Yeah, Mara.
Oh, she thought I was going to go to you, but I flipped it. I sent it right at her.
Please,
what
may
do
I
you pray
perfect
for?
this recipe. What do
She
you pray
prays,
for,
I
Mara?
want to satisfy the devotees.
Yeah.
May you accept this offering.
It sort of shifts, but I pray that I see like the divine hand in my life and have like sort of the strength and courage to walk on that path. A lot of the times I pray that I may view others that are suffering with more of a compassionate heart and with more love. And mostly that I open up my heart and open up, to the love of Krishna.
Beautiful.
Well, your prayers are answered because your heart is very open, Mara.
And maybe a little occasional prayer on behalf of Papa Tony?
Yeah,
You pray for
regularly.
Okay, good. Raghunath?
What do I pray for? I
Yeah.
pray for my family. I pray for my family's deep spiritual connection.
Nice.
And I pray for peace in the family to set examples for people with families to be like, okay, if I can teach this stuff and have a good family life, then people with families feel like, well, there's hope. He's doing it. So I pray for that for an example, but I also pray for their deep spiritual connection. I pray to Krishna to protect me from Maya. That's one of my strong, loud
Beautiful.
prayers.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Just
when life goes good, there's a tendency to think, yeah, life is pretty good. And that's when I really got to pray to protect me from Maya, because Maya, it's not so bad, big deal. There's all these warnings. Got to pray for protection from Maya. Maya's super, super tricky. And
sneaky.
especially, I feel like we're doing good work in the world, right? I feel like wisdom says is good work in the world. And whenever you do good work in the world, Maya's ready to just chop you down. So I pray to protect me from Maya. Because if we're leading this podcast, I mean, I sort of feel like we're part of the podcast, but we are leading it. I feel like unless I'm spiritually connected, I won't be able to give anything to anybody. So protect me from Maya and keep it. Remember what I am, which is a tiny little insignificant part of something bigger.
Thank you for that, Raghunath. By the way, we're getting some comments. Your mic is low, Raghunath. When you lean forward, it's better. When you lean back, it gets real low. You might want to increase the input.
I just want to tie it to my
head. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so this chapter, Purusha Shukta confirming what was taught in the Rig Veda. We're going to hear it again. I confirm it, right? I'm going to say it again, but in more detail, with more clarification of who that Purusha is, we're going to find here in Bhagavatam. It's not as explicit in the Vedas. It's going to be totally explicit in the Bhagavatam, who the Purusha is. Ultimately, it's Krishna. He expands as Lord Vishnu, the original creator. And then all of the material realm is generated from him. It gets interesting, but this chapter is an answer to previous chapter's question where Narada said to Brahma, he said, my dear father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? Under whose control is all this being done? That's in the second verse to the previous chapter, 252. All right. So you want to dip in, Raghunath?
Yeah.
Let's read the first couple verses and then let's discuss it a bit.
Gain. I'm trying to figure out how to turn my mic on. I'm just going to put my face closer.
There you go.
Because it seems like the message board is all like, you're too low. All right. Text 1. Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice and the controlling deity of fire.
Is
His
fire.
skin and 6 other...
And the controlling deity is fire.
I'm sorry, controlling deity is fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs. Love that word. I wonder if that's a British thing. Foodstuffs.
Foodstuffs.
Someone from England, tell us if it's British. Um,
And delicacies.
Foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers, and the general mass of people.
When I think
His
of
2
delicacies, I think of Mara's vegan sushi. It's like a
that's
delicacy.
Thank you, Kaustubha.
Sure.
His 2 nostrils are the generating centers of our breathing and of all other airs. His smelling powers generate the Ashwini Kamaras, demigods, and all kinds of medicinal herbs, and his breathing energies produce different kinds of fragrance. His eyes are the generating centers of all kinds of forms, and they glitter and illuminate. His eyeballs are like the sun and the heavenly planets. His ears hear from all sides and are receptacles for all the Vedas, and his sense of hearing is the generating center of the sky and all kinds of sound. His bodily surface is the breeding ground for active principles of everything and for all kinds of auspicious opportunities. His skin, like the moving air, is the generating center for all kinds of sense of touch and is the place for performing all kinds of sacrifice. The hairs on his body are the cause of all vegetation, particularly those trees which are required as ingredients for sacrifice. What is the wood that they put in the
Is it Arnie?
I don't know. Not sure.
I think it's called Arnie.
We're doing the wedding ceremony for Rachel and Jeff. But make sure we put the right wood in there. We screwed up. You're not really married. We put the wrong wood in. We put in pine. The hairs on the body are the cause. Oh, no, I read that. The Lord's arms are the productive fields for the great demigods and for other leaders of the living entities who protect the general mass. Thus, the forward steps of the Lord are the shelter for the upper, lower, and heavenly planets, as well as for all that we need. His lotus feet serve as protection from all kinds of fear. From the Lord's genitals originate water, semen, generatives, rains, and the procreators. His genitals are the cause of pleasure, for that counteracts the distress of begetting. What?
In other words, that's what makes it worth like all the trouble of having children.
I get it. Oh, Narda, the evacuating outlet of the universal form of the Lord is the abode of the controlling deity of death, Mitra. And the evacuating hole and the rectum of the Lord is the place of envy, misfortune, death, hell, etc. The back of the Lord is the place of all kinds of frustration and ignorance, as well as for immorality. From his veins flow the great rivers and rivulets, and on his bones are stacked the great mountains. The impersonal feature of the Lord is the abode of great oceans, and his belly is the resting place of the materially annihilated living entities. His heart is the abode of the subtle material bodies of living beings. Thus it is known by the intelligent class of men. Also, the consciousness of that great personality is the abode of Dharma, mine, yours, and those of the 4 bachelors. These are the 4 little boys. They're not really little boys, but they're the great sages. Shanaka, Sanatan, Sanat Kumar, and Sanandana. These are the 4 Kumars. That consciousness is also the abode of truth and transcendental knowledge. Beginning from Brahma down to you and Shiva, all the great sages who were born before you, the demigods, the demons, the nagas, those are the snake people, the human beings, the birds, the beasts, as well as the reptiles, etc., and all the phenomenal manifestations of the universe, namely the planets, the stars, the asteroids, the luminaries, lightning, thunder, and the inhabitants of different planetary systems, namely the Gandharvas, Apsaras, Yakshas, Rakshas, Bhutanganas, Uragas, Pashus, the Pittas, the Siddhas, the Vidyadhar. We're talking about higher beings and lower beings, aka aliens. The Charanas and all other different varieties, because that's what they are, including the birds, beasts, trees, and everything that be, are all covered by the universal form of the Lord at all times, namely past, present, and future. Although he is transcendental to all of them, eternally existing in a form not exceeding 9 inches. What?
That's a
The sun
reference.
illuminates. That's
Okay.
the reference of the Paramatma, right?
The Paramatma. So, but now we just read a good chunk, a section, right?
So this is the imaginary idea of what God is, according to material nature. Is that a correct?
Well,
Is that a correct?
I would say what's happening here, what's being described here, what this is meant to help us, like, in other words, well, why am I hearing all this? First of all, like, what's the purpose of hearing it? And second of all, how can I understand it? And I would say, to begin with, like, what we're hearing is, it's Lord Brahma, the secondary creator, even third creator, of the material realm. He's speaking to his son Narada. Narada's asked, are you the creator of everything? Does everything come from you? Is there someone else behind it? Where does it all come from? And now he's giving a somewhat detailed, it's still kind of very general, but in a way it's getting more specific now about how everything that we see in this world, how it's originally coming from a personal, from a person. From the word Purusha literally means person. And it also means enjoyer. And so we can understand there's a connection there, right? That any person by nature, they enjoy. And here it's being said that Krishna or Lord Vishnu is the original person and the original enjoyer. But in order to enjoy, you need senses and you need the objects of the senses. And so what's being described here is that we are in a virtual reality. And in order to facilitate our, let's put it this way, that the universe didn't just appear by chance. That all the things mentioned here, including the senses and the objects of the senses and all the different varieties of, when it describes all these different, you were calling them aliens, right? But all these different types of humans that exist on different levels, different planets with different abilities and different skills. And, like for instance, it mentions, what the Apsaras mentions.
The Apsaras, the Gandharvas, the
Gandharvas. So like it's said that there are beings, in the higher realms that have incredible, like one of their abilities is musical ability, right?
Incredible musicians.
That they create music that we just can't even conceive of, just how wonderful, uplifting. We can experience a feeling of joy or so many emotions through music, and a feeling of being uplifted and transported by music, but they just have like power of music that's like way beyond what we can imagine.
Beyond Anthrax and Megadeth?
Yes, way beyond that, actually. and so there's all these different forms that they're all produced in order to facilitate our experience, to try to enjoy this world separately from God, right? So it's like a virtual reality is created, but what is that virtual reality created from? What is it generated from? It's generated from the reality, because virtual reality is generated out of reality, right? So when it's saying here that
that's a good point.
Okay.
Virtual realities, right? If I want to play a video game of a war, well, where did that war come from? It came from our real life experience of what war is.
Right.
So this, fascinating world that we live in, filled with, I'm thinking what's around my neighborhood: deer, skunks, raccoons.
Yeah. You got hyenas or something out there, right?
Hyenas?
Don't you have something like that? They howl at night there?
Coyotes.
Coyotes.
Hyenas are like from Africa.
Are they? Well, whatever, man. Yeah. Howling beast out there.
There are howling beasts, yeah. Coy dogs. but they're coming from something. This is just a reflection. Even our bodies, right? Our abilities, they're like reflections of something. Even Megadeth and Anthrax are reflections of something, of a spiritual realm, if you think about it.
Yes.
But it's all through the filter of Kali Yuga, and our bodies, our animals and stuff like that. So it's a reflection. It's made up, and it's temporary. So we're speaking about there's an original forms, original sense, original sounds. It's just not like random.
Right.
Random is that's the crazy creation story. We're talking about, you think this stuff's crazy creation?
That requires a ton of faith.
Tons of faith. That is the new religion.
Yeah.
Just believe in that everything in all variety came from single cell organisms. Come on.
And where do they come from?
I'm no scientist, but that is ridiculous. Okay. We got to bring a scientist on, because now I just sound like some like
bring from
crazy fundamentalist.
Yeah. But let's just break it down to simple terms. One idea is that my ability to speak to you and for you to understand me, right? For us to experience this world and conceive of it and process the information and experience pleasure through the senses and communicate and create and all of that just happened. How it happened, it happened real slow. But it happened, and just by chance. That's one presentation. Now, what the Bhagavatam is saying is that no. This place was designed. It was designed for purpose. What was the purpose? Each one of us had a desire to try to enjoy as if we were God. And so then the virtual reality is created. And in that virtual reality, the virtual reality is generated out of the reality. For instance, Raghunath, name a place that you've never visited in your life that you would like to see.
Mauritius.
Mauritius.
It's been on my bucket list.
Okay. So
the Seychelles Islands, yeah.
Okay. And so let's say that you had this desire to experience Mauritius. You've never been there before. I'm going to create a virtual reality for you so that you're actually not visiting Mauritius, but it's something like visiting Mauritius.
Right. And
so in order to do that, I'm going to generate, tell me the things that you want to experience in Mauritius.
I'd like to see the ocean.
Is it a particular beach?
There's Hindu temples everywhere in Mauritius.
Is there a particular Hindu temple that you know of?
I don't know. Let's just call it because this isn't reality and you're not going to actually take me there.
Yeah.
Let's just say we're going to go to a Ram temple.
Okay.
And let's say I'm going to see dolphins.
Okay. Mara, give me a Ram temple in Mauritius if you can. Okay. Give me an actual name. But I know that that's what you want to experience.
Yeah.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate out of what already exists a facsimile within a virtual world.
Yeah,
and then
you
could
like a video game.
Like a video game.
Talk about the war video game because you've been to war and you know what it looks like. So you're going to give the input of how to design the screen.
Yeah.
And the avatars.
The sound, the visuals, anything there? No?
Yeah. No, I got one. Maheshwarnath Mandir.
The Maheshwarnath
Mandir.
Okay, so there's Maheshwarnath Mandir, which is situated where in Mauritius?
In Triolet, Mauritius.
Let's all go. Let's do a retreat in Mauritius.
It's actually a Shiva temple. I'm sorry, but
yeah,
it was the first one that came up.
Like a Shiva temple.
It was the first one that came
from
up.
Shiva.
Okay.
Well, Raghu would like to go see a Shiva temple in Mauritius.
Yeah, so we're working with the Shiva temple. I know what it looks like. I know how it's designed. I know the size. I know, and I'm going to recreate that in a virtual realm. So we could say that the Shiva temple in the virtual reality that Raghunath is going to walk through is generated out of the real one that's situated in Mauritius. Okay. And so as we read these verses, the mouth of the Virat Rupa is the generating center of the voice and the controlling deity of fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns. His tongue is the productive center, the food stuff. It's saying that our ability to, one of the great pleasures that we want to enjoy in this virtual reality is the taste, right? Taste of food, right? It's one of the fundamental pleasures in life. Our ability to enjoy food, the experience of taste, is generated out of Lord Vishnu's ability to taste. And he creates the tongue, he creates the ability to taste, he creates a deva that's going to be responsible for that function within this virtual reality, right? And then he is also going to create the various tastes: sweet, sour, bitter, astringent, et cetera, et cetera.
Pungent.
Because we have the desire to connect, to have a separate experience of enjoyment from God, from the Purusha, the original Purusha, we become the secondary Purusha, because Purusha also means like humanity, right?
Yeah, we are little Purushas.
We're
And
the little
Prakriti, in this case, is the second way they use
Yeah.
Purusha and Prakriti. One is, Kaustubha said earlier, Purusha is God and Prakriti is everything else. But also we are Purusha. We are enjoyers. We are the people. And Prakriti is material nature.
Yeah. So again, where he says his two nostrils of the original Purusha are the generating centers of our breathing and of all of our other airs. His smelling powers generate the Ashvini Kumar demigods and all kinds of medicinal herbs. And his breathing energies produce different kinds of fragrance. So there's another thing, smell, right? Smelling something that's very pleasant. It's one of the enjoyments of this world. He's saying it's the original Purusha's ability to smell is what we want to experience in this world. We're given the sense of smell. We're given the objects of aroma to smell. And then the Ashvini Kumar demigods are given the responsibility to make sure that function is operating right within the virtual realm. So it's almost like if I wanted to create a virtual reality for you, but I was like designating, I said, Mara, I want you to create the experience of the sound of the Shiva temple in Mauritius. So whatever you need to do to program that into the virtual reality, you do that. And then I said to someone else, I said to Liam Wilson, I want you to create the visuals of that. So now you've become the devas in this virtual reality where you're facilitating that. If the visuals are changing, then you're gonna change it. So that's what's happening here. So this material, again, the idea is that this didn't happen by chance, that the universe is specifically designed to facilitate the desires of the jivas, of the souls, to experiment with pleasure away from God. And this chapter is describing how all that equipment, such as the senses and the objects of the senses, and the devas that are responsible for the functioning of that in the virtual realm, how it's all generated out of the reality in the spiritual realm. And now this becomes a really important point. If we want to understand what Bhakti-yoga is, Bhakti-yoga says, okay, you've given me all this equipment in the virtual reality. You've given me the ability to see. You've given me the ability to taste. You've given me the objects to see and to taste and so on, to touch, to smell, etc. I've been experimenting with this. I've been experiencing some pleasure, but also the virtual reality has been designed that I experience pain as well. And I'm beginning to recognize the connection that with pleasure comes pain in the virtual realm. And that pain, that disappointment, that depression, that emptiness, that God-shaped hole is there to turn me back and saying, I want the reality now. And the method for that is to take those very same senses and those very same sense objects, and rather than enjoy them separately, I'm going to reconnect them with the original Purusha, with the original source. And that process is called Bhakti-yoga, engaging my senses in the service of the master, the ultimate master, the creator of the senses, the original Purusha, or Krishna. That makes sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Go on.
No, you please go ahead.
We have these senses. We have these senses, but they want to enjoy everything of the temporary world. And this is that's what's going on. And so we're given like this access point back to, we're trying to connect the sense objects and the senses back with the spiritual realm. And that's our access point out of this matrix.
That's right. Now let's read Prabhupada's commentary to the first text now. Okay, he says, the opulences of the universal form of the Lord are described herein. It is said that his mouth is a generating center of all kinds of voices, and his controlling deity is the fire demigod. Did you know that?
No,
I didn't know that. And his skin and other 6 layers of bodily construction are the representatives, generating centers of the 7 kinds of Vedic hymns, like the Gayatri. Gayatri is the beginning of all Vedic mantras, and it is explained in the first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, now listen to this. He says, since the generating centers are the different parts of the universal form of the Lord, and since the form of the Lord is transcendental to the material creation, it is to be understood that the voice, the tongue, the skin, etc., suggests that the Lord in his transcendental form is not without them, right? If I'm in a virtual reality, anything that I'm experiencing, I should understand that it exists in the reality, right? There's nothing in the virtual reality that doesn't exist outside the virtual reality. It can't be conceived of. It's only the stuff that we experience here that we put into the virtual reality.
Well, can't someone argue, I've played video games like Joust.
Just
Remember Joust? It's like,
I don't remember it,
it's
but
something like flying, dragons or things that they're fictitious beasts that you're flying around and they're laying eggs.
well, let's say there's a fictitious.
So can I create something that doesn't exist?
But laying eggs exist, and every quality of that beast exists. You're just playing with the qualities that already exist.
We can't imagine things that don't exist, or
Well,
must they exist if we imagine them?
That's the point. Like you might blend the things that you already have experienced in this world.
For example, they're creating Star Wars, so they're creating these beasts that don't exist. Or are you saying they do exist? If you thought of it, exists.
Whether it's that or whether, in other words, let's say I conceive of a dog that lays eggs, right?
Yeah.
Like a chicken does. Well, that's because I've seen a dog and I've seen a chicken lay eggs. And so I can create in my imagination or in a virtual reality, a dog that lays eggs.
So we have nothing in that
You
our
got
intelligence, nothing in our intelligence that is not created. That's a little scary.
Why?
Well, because I could think of some horrible things. That means they exist.
Well, we see that all the time. We see horrible things all the time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So now he said, going on. So the point he made here is that if I can taste, if I can touch, if I can smell, if I can see, then we should understand that the original Purusha has all these abilities. He's not impersonal or non-personal, that the source is personal.
Sure.
Okay.
I get that. That's like I think that's sort of easy for Judeo-Christian people, tribe of people to get, that there's a personal form. I understand also there's an impersonal form, and there's a desire, and we got burned by people in the past, and we want our God to be just a cloud-like being of goodness and sweetness and wonderfulness. Peace, because life can be hellish, so I'd like it to be peaceful. But I could also understand how God is actually both. God is like nebulous, formless, and God is a being.
Both are there.
That can reciprocate love.
Yeah.
I like that, Mara? Nebulous. Nebulous. I thought she'd light up. She didn't go to private school,
Okay.
All right.
Let's continue with this commentary. He says the material voice, our ability to speak, or the energy of taking foodstuff, our ability to eat, is generated originally from the Lord. Such actions are but perverted reflections of the original reservoirs. And so again, here's Prabhupada's old use of English, right? Perverted, we have a different understanding of it. But let's say warped, it changed, right? That as God eats and as God speaks, we're given a reflection of that's somewhat warped in this realm. That's where Megadeth and Anthrax come in.
It's a warped, it's different than the Gandharvas.
And then he goes on, such actions are perverted reflections of the original reservoirs. The transcendental situation is not without spiritual variegatedness. It's not just all a divine light. There's variety there. In the spiritual world, all the perverted forms of material variegatedness are fully represented in their original spiritual identity. Whatever's warped here is there in its original unwarped form,
Very interesting.
including, and it's most fundamentally love, right?
Very interesting, right? Love
Yeah.
that's eternal instead
Love
of
that's
temporary.
eternal, love that's pure, love that's entirely selfless, compared to the warped love that we play out here in our warped bodies, in our warped settings.
In a warp, I mean, love in the material world is the only place where you could say, I love this person so much. And then that very same person, you, in the same way you love them more than anyone, then you hate them more than anyone in the universe as well. Only that can only play out on a planet like
That's
this.
the warped reflection, for sure.
Yeah. Love should be eternal.
There you go.
It's a real thing. It's a substantial thing.
Now he says the only difference is that the material activities are contaminated by the three modes of material nature, whereas the potencies in the spiritual world are all pure because they are engaged in the unalloyed transcendental loving service of the Lord. In other words, they're connected properly, naturally, harmoniously with the original source.
I tell you, all this stuff, Kaustubha, it punctures the romance of the material world. Because the material world, it's ultimately, it is like a video game. It is dreamlike. It is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you say, yeah. What it does do is makes you want to invest in your spiritual life.
Yeah.
That's where that has the biggest return on investment, our spiritual life.
Yeah, this is, someone might say, okay, this is your religion, this is your theology, but think about it. Just that's all, that's all we can suggest. Contemplate this. Does this make sense? Does this help you make sense of all of your experiences and relationships that are happening to you in this world, and consider it and maybe experiment with it? Now, Prabhupada goes on, he says, in the spiritual world, the Lord is the sublime enjoyer of everything. Purusha means enjoyer, right? And the living entities there are all engaged in his transcendental loving service without any contamination of the modes of material nature. That's the deluding influence that's programmed into the virtual reality. The activities in the spiritual world are without any of the difficulties of the material world, but there is no question of impersonal voidness on the spiritual platform as suggested by the impersonalists. Devotional service is defined in Narada Pancharatra as follows. So this is great because now we're hearing from Narada, who was asking the original question. Now we're going to hear from his book, Narada Pancharatra, this fundamental, really important verse about what.
Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratevena nirmalam rishikena rishikesa sevanam bhaktir uchyate.
Okay, so let's read the translation here. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam. All of the upadis, false designations. Well, let's read the full translation first. Bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all of our senses, all that equipment that we've been provided to enjoy life separately from God with, we turn it back to God, right? Bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of God, the master of all senses. When the spirit soul renders devotional service or reconnects to the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm American, I'm black, I'm white, I'm European,
I'm free. I'm Republican, I'm Democrat.
And all of that, right? You recognize none of that's real. All that's just programming in the virtual reality that's changing at every second. I'm beyond all that. So the first side effect is one is freed from all material designations.
What a relief, by the way. Just that alone. What a relief.
Yeah. That's reality. That's the only platform for peace. That's the only platform for harmony, right? And then second, one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. In other words, I begin to see and taste and hear and understand things in the context of reality, rather than it being clouded or confused by my attachments and by my illusion, by the influence of the modes of material nature. So this verse is so important and so fundamental, right? Simply by the process, I wanted to live separately, and it put me in a condition of suffering. I was given the equipment, including the senses and the objects of the senses, to play that experiment or play that game. The process of bhakti says, take that equipment and take all of it and turn it back towards your original source, back towards the original reality, beyond the virtual reality.
I was given the instruments to enjoy the temporary world, but there's a foundational problem. I'm a eternal being, and therefore there is always going to be pain there. I'm an eternal being, and I'm trying to enjoy temporary matter, and I have to lose it. It comes, it goes. It's temporary. It comes, it goes. You fall in love, and then you have to lose it. Therefore, there's got to be a more subtle thing, we use the very senses which are tricking us and capturing us and putting us in the spider web. To now we use those senses to release us. So whatever you have that's complicating your life, you take that same energy and you use it to liberate your life.
Turn it back.
Yeah, like electricity. You can use electricity to burn, or you can use electricity to freeze. That was one of Prabhupada's analogies.
He did, yeah.
I didn't make that one up.
You can make an air conditioner with electricity, or you can make a heater with it.
Yeah, so we're going to take that same energy that we have, the material senses, our material proclivities, our material talents, which can cause, even if you're good at them, you're really good, you're a really good artist, you're a really good musician, you're really good with numbers, all those things you're really good can really complicate your life. Why? Because the ego gets attached to them. We start thinking, yeah, I am this. Can't you see all these accolades I'm getting? This is because I'm so good. That same thing that we're using for our success in the material world will cause competition, ego, backbiting, lust, greed, anger, envy. And so we take those same things, that same energy, and use it towards our liberation and engage it in service of Bhagavan, in service of Lord Vishnu, and those very same things. What happens is people get so frustrated with their talents that they just give them up and walk away and want to move to a cave. In Bhakti, we say, don't do that. We say, take them and engage them. And then it's using that very same thorn to get the thorn out. That's the beautiful analogy too. You walk in the forest barefoot and you get a thorn. What do? You have no tweezers. You find another thorn and you use that thorn to get rid of that thorn splinter. We're using the material world to sort of release ourselves from the material world.
That's it, right? Either you have two ways to go. Either shut down that equipment, which is very hard to do, and that's like relates.
That's what people think yoga is, right, Kaustubha?
Well, some paths of yoga are like that, but we really don't have the ability to practice them. We're so weak at it.
Unless you're ready just to shut down, pack it up, pack it in.
Yeah.
Back it up, back it in, let it. You know where I was going with that?
I'm not sure of it.
I was like, yeah, I do.
But so in any case, you can either try to shut down that equipment, which we have a lot of trouble doing, and we generally fail at miserably, and we're not prepared to, like wander off to the forest and sit in a cave and meditate alone. Or take that equipment and turn it back to the original source. So Prabhupada, let's conclude with this. He says, originally, since all the senses are produced of the Lord's reservoir of senses, since our senses are just a reflection of the Lord's, they ultimately belong to him. The sensual activities of the material world are to be purified not shut down, purified by the process of devotional service, and thus the perfection of life can be attained simply by purifying the present position of our material activities. Not stopping them, but purifying them. And the purifying process begins from the stage of being liberated from the conception of different designations. Every living entity is engaged in some sort of service, either for the self or for the family or for the society, country, etc. But unfortunately, all such services are rendered due to material attachment, due to taking the virtual reality as real. The attachments of the material affinity may be simply changed, not killed, not annihilated, not snuffed out, but simply realigned, right? Changed to the service of the Lord. And thus the treatment of being freed from the material attachment begins automatically. That's the process of bhakti.
And that is a, oh, come on, Raghunath.
DJ Raghu, what's going on?
Take that DJ card away from me.
Purusha Shukta confirmed right here.
Purusha Shukta confirmed. Thanks to everybody for joining us. How many did we have in the... Whoa, we had 107. That means we must have had 108 at some point today. Thanks for everybody joining us.
That's not necessarily a logical conclusion. Because it's 107 now, it does not necessarily
There's always one
mean...
person who's like, I can't do this.
Okay, probably you're right. It's most likely.
Thanks to everybody joining us live on Zoom. Zoom's fun. It's fun to be on Zoom. If you're one of the others out there just listening from abroad, join us here on Zoom Live at 5 a.m. every morning. Set your alarm clock. Dance around, look at each other, wave occasionally, write messages to each other on the message board. Make these people that are living in your life virtually your best friends. We've done this now. And you can join us by emailing Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and then she will write back and she will give you the secret codes to enter into this little party we're having. We're community sponsored. Please support us on patreon.com/wisdomofthesages, and go to Apple Podcasts and write a review, please. If you haven't done that, do that today. Write a review. Tell us how you got here, and it means a lot to us. Thanks, everybody. And now the funnest part of my day is when I get in my seat, I make my namaste, start going like this, clapping my hands together. And then everybody does a very unique dance, not to impress each other, but to impress Lord Vishnu.